The Ashfield Tech Solutions annual party was everything I expected: overpriced catering, forced networking, and speeches about synergy that made my teeth ache. I nursed my second beer at a corner table, watching my wife Erin work the room like she owned it. Her laugh carried over the corporate jazz, bright and practiced, the same one she'd perfected for client meetings. I'm Grant Solen, and I fix computers for a living. Not glamorous, but it pays the bills and keeps me invisible at events like this. While Erin climbed the project management ladder, I stayed in my lane, the tech guy married to the rising star. People forgot I existed 5 minutes after meeting me, which suited me fine. That invisibility became useful when Janine Morrison slid into the chair beside me. Janine worked in Erin's department, all gossip and ambition wrapped in a designer dress she couldn't afford. Her cheeks were flushed from champagne, and her eyes held that dangerous gleam of someone with secrets to spill. "Grant, right?" She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Your wife's in the parking lot with someone." I didn't flinch, didn't turn toward the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the lot. Instead, I took another sip of beer and pulled out my phone. My fingers moved across the screen with the same calm precision I used to diagnose corrupted hard drives. The text was simple: "Wave to the security camera on your left." Janine watched me with hungry eyes, waiting for drama that didn't come. "Aren't you going to check?" "Already did." I opened the security app I'd installed on our home system months ago. The parking lot camera feed loaded instantly, one of the perks of having a husband who understood networks better than most IT departments. There she was. Erin stood between two cars, close enough to a tall man that their shadows merged under the sodium lights. Too close for a casual conversation. The man's hand rested on her lower back, possessive and familiar. When my text arrived, I watched her check her phone, look around confused, then spot the camera mounted on the light pole. She waved, a small, uncertain gesture that might have looked innocent to anyone else. But I knew my wife. Erin never waved at cameras. She hated having her picture taken unless she controlled the angle, the lighting, the narrative. This wave was different, startled, almost guilty. The man beside her stepped back as she waved, his face turning away from the camera. Professional instinct, maybe, or just smart. Either way, I'd seen enough. "If she's innocent," I muttered, watching the feed, "the Academy should give her an award." Janine blinked. "What?" "Nothing." I pocketed the phone and stood. "Thanks for the heads up." "That's it? You're not going out there?" I looked at her, this woman who'd just handed me a loaded weapon disguised as gossip. Why would I interrupt? They look like they're having an important conversation. The confusion on Janine's face was almost comical. She'd expected rage, confrontation, maybe tears. Instead, she got a man who seemed more interested in his empty beer bottle than his wife's infidelity. "I should get going," I said. "Early morning tomorrow." "But Erin, we'll be fine. She always is." I walked out through the main entrance, not the parking lot exit. No dramatic confrontations, no raised voices. Just a quiet man leaving a loud party, invisible as always. The drive home took 15 minutes through Ashfield's winding streets. Our Victorian house sat on Maple Street, 3 bedrooms and a basement workshop, where I ran my repair business. Erin called it quaint when we bought it 5 years ago. Now she complained about the creaky floors and outdated kitchen, dropping hints about condos closer to her office. I parked in our driveway and sat in the dark truck for a moment, engine ticking as it cooled. The house looked normal, porch light on, curtains drawn, everything exactly as we'd left it. But something fundamental had shifted tonight, like a circuit board with one connection loose. Everything still worked, but the current flowed differently now. Inside, I went straight to my workshop. The basement smelled like solder and coffee, familiar and comforting. I had 3 laptops waiting for repair, a desktop with a fried motherboard, and a tablet that someone had dropped in a bathtub. Honest work with clear problems and logical solutions. unlike marriages. I pulled up the security footage on my main monitor, the one with the good resolution. The parking lot scene played out again in crisp detail. Erin and her companion, I could see now that he was maybe 40, well-dressed, with the kind of confident posture that screamed management, stood close enough to share secrets. His hand on her back wasn't casual. Neither was the way she leaned into him when she laughed. The timestamp showed 9:47 p.m. My text arrived at 9:48. Her wave came at 9:49, followed by what looked like a hurried conversation. By 9:52, they'd separated, walking to different cars. Professional habits kicked in. I saved the footage to 3 different drives, uploaded a copy to secure cloud storage, and made a note of the timestamp. Evidence gathering, the same methodical approach I used for insurance claims when clients damaged their equipment. My phone buzzed. Erin's name on the caller ID. "Hey, honey." Her voice was bright, normal, maybe slightly breathless. "The party's winding down. I'm heading home now." "Drive safe," I said. "Roads are getting slick." "Always do. Love you." "Love you too." The line went quiet. Not silent. Quiet. The kind of pause that held weight, like she was waiting for something. A question, maybe, or an accusation. When neither came, she hung up. I looked at the clock. 10:15 p.m. The party venue was 12 minutes from our house. If she left right after calling, she'd be home by 10:30. She walked through the door at 11:20. "Sorry I'm late," Erin said, hanging her coat in the hall closet. "Janine cornered me about the Morrison project. You know how she gets." I looked up from my laptop at the kitchen table. Spreadsheets covered the screen, invoices, repair logs, the mundane mathematics of small business ownership. "No problem. How was the party?" The usual corporate nonsense. Boring speeches, bad wine, forced networking. She kicked off her heels and padded to the refrigerator in stocking feet. "You left early." "Headache," I said, which wasn't entirely a lie. Plus, I had work to catch up on. Erin opened a bottle of water and leaned against the counter. Even tired, she looked polished, blonde hair still perfect, makeup intact, dress unwrinkled. Project managers had to maintain appearances, she always said. Image was part of the job. "Did I miss anything important?" I asked. "Just Thompson's speech about quarterly targets, the same thing he says every quarter." She drank her water, watching me over the bottle. "Janine asked about you." "Yeah? What about?" "Just wondered why you left. I told her you weren't feeling well." I nodded and returned to my spreadsheet. Numbers didn't lie, didn't make excuses, didn't stand too close to other numbers in parking lots. They were reliable in ways people weren't. "I'm going to shower," Erin said. "Long day. I'll be up in a bit." She paused at the kitchen doorway. "Grant, everything okay? You seem distant." I looked at her. Really looked. 5 years of marriage, 2 years of dating before that, 7 years of learning her expressions, her tells, the way she tilted her head when she was thinking. Right now, she looked concerned, maybe slightly worried, but underneath, something else. Relief, maybe, that I wasn't asking questions. "Just tired," I said. "This Morrison project you mentioned, that's new?" "Not new exactly, just more complicated than we thought." She shifted her weight from one foot to the other. "Lots of moving parts, you know. Requires more coordination." "With Janine?" "Among others." Another pause. "Why?" "No reason. You mentioned she cornered you about it." "Right." She had questions about the timeline. Erin's smile was perfectly calibrated, not too bright, not too forced. Nothing I couldn't handle. After she went upstairs, I pulled up our phone records. Verizon's online portal showed call logs, text summaries, data usage. All perfectly legal. We shared an account and I paid the bills. Just a husband checking for unusual charges, making sure we weren't going over our data limits. The patterns emerged quickly. Erin's phone showed regular calls to a number I didn't recognize, always during business hours, usually lasting 15 to 20 minutes. The calls started 3 months ago and increased in frequency over time. Recent weeks showed daily contact. Text messages were trickier. Verizon only provided summaries, not content, but the volume told a story. Hundreds of texts to the same unknown number, often late at night or early in the morning. Times when she was supposedly sleeping beside me. I cross-referenced the number with reverse lookup services. The results came back clean, too clean. Unlisted, probably a corporate phone or burner. Someone who understood operational security. Upstairs, the shower ran. I had maybe 10 minutes before Erin finished her nightly routine. Enough time to check one more thing. Our shared laptop lived on the kitchen counter, used mainly for streaming and online shopping. Erin wasn't particularly tech-savvy, which meant she probably hadn't cleared her browser history or cache files. People assumed deleting meant gone, but data had a way of lingering in unexpected places. The browser history was clean, too clean. Someone had wiped it recently, probably tonight. But browser caches were trickier to find, buried in system folders most users never accessed. I navigated to the hidden directory and found fragments of recent activity. Google Maps searches for restaurants I'd never heard of, Yelp reviews for hotels in nearby towns, Amazon purchases that hadn't appeared on our credit card statements, which meant she had accounts I didn't know about. The shower stopped. I closed the laptop and returned to my spreadsheets, fingers moving across the keyboard with practiced efficiency. When Erin came downstairs in her robe, hair wrapped in a towel, I was exactly where she'd left me. "Still working?" she asked. "Almost done, just balancing the books." She moved behind my chair and placed her hands on my shoulders, fingers kneading the tension in my neck. Her touch was familiar, automatic, the kind of casual intimacy that developed over years together. "You work too hard," she said softly. "When's the last time we went out? Just the two of us?" "Been a while," I admitted. "We should plan something. A weekend away, maybe. That bed and breakfast in Vermont you liked." Her hands continued their massage, working at knots I hadn't realized were there. The gesture felt practiced, like she was following a script. Deflect with intimacy, redirect with future plans, maintain the status quo. "Sounds nice," I said. "When were you thinking?" "Soon. After this Morrison project wraps up, things should be calmer then." "How much longer will that take?" Her hands stilled for just a moment. "Hard to say. These complex projects, you know how they are. Lots of variables." I saved my spreadsheet and closed the laptop. "I'm beat. Ready for bed?" "Actually, I'm pretty wired. Think I'll stay up and read for a bit." She moved away from my chair, putting distance between us. "Don't wait up." Upstairs, I lay in our king-sized bed and listened to the house settle around me. Erin's reading light stayed on until almost 2 a.m., but I never heard pages turning. Just the soft glow under the bedroom door and the occasional ping of her phone receiving messages. I didn't sleep much that night. Instead, I stared at the ceiling and thought about patterns. In my business, patterns meant everything. A computer that crashed every Tuesday probably had a scheduled process going wrong. A laptop that overheated during specific tasks usually had a failing component. Random problems were rare. Most issues followed predictable cycles once you knew what to look for. Marriages, apparently, weren't that different. The next morning, Erin was gone before I woke up. Her note on the kitchen counter mentioned an early meeting and a long day ahead. She'd signed it with a heart, the same way she'd done for years. I made coffee and sat at the table with my laptop, pulling up the security footage from the night before. In daylight, with a clear head, I could see details I'd missed. The man's face, partially visible when he turned, his license plate, just barely readable in the corner of the frame, the way he and Erin moved together, like dancers who'd practiced their steps. Professional curiosity made me run the plate number through a service I used for business background checks. The results came back in minutes. 2019 BMW sedan, registered to Elliot Brand, age 41, address in Ashfield's upscale Riverside district. A quick LinkedIn search filled in the rest. Elliot Brand, Senior Director of Business Development at Ashfield Tech Solutions. Erin's company, Erin's colleague, probably Erin's boss, based on the org chart I found buried in the company website. I sat back in my chair and sipped my coffee. The pieces were falling into place with mechanical precision, each new fact clicking into position like components on a motherboard. The late nights, the mysterious phone calls, the cleaned browser history, all of it suddenly made perfect sense. My wife was having an affair with her boss. The knowledge settled over me like a familiar weight, heavy but not crushing. I'd suspected for weeks, maybe months. The confirmation brought clarity, not shock. Now I could stop wondering and start planning. Because if there's one thing I learned from years of fixing broken systems, it's this. Once you understand the problem, the solution becomes obvious. I spent the morning doing what I do best, gathering information methodically, like debugging corrupted software. The difference was that instead of tracking down faulty drivers or malware infections, I was mapping my wife's deception. Elliot Brand's digital footprint was surprisingly extensive for someone having an affair. His Facebook account was public, filled with photos from corporate events, weekend hiking trips, and dinners at expensive restaurants. Recent posts showed him at several locations that matched Erin's supposed late work nights: the Riverside Grill, Ashfield Country Club, the Marriott downtown. More interesting were the photos where he wasn't alone, a woman's hand visible at the edge of the frame, holding a wine glass, blonde hair partially obscured by shadow. Familiar jewelry that I'd bought for Christmas 2 years ago. I saved everything to encrypted folders, organizing files by date and relevance. If this situation escalated, when it escalated, I wanted documentation that would hold up under scrutiny. My phone rang around 10 a.m. Local number, but not one I recognized. Grant Solen speaking. Mr. Solen? This is Patricia Wells from Ashfield Insurance. I'm calling about a policy change request we received. I set down my coffee. What kind of change? Your wife submitted paperwork to modify the beneficiary on your joint life insurance policy. The request shows her changing from joint beneficiary to sole beneficiary, with a secondary designation for... Papers rustled. E. Brand. I'm required to confirm these changes with both policyholders. The room felt suddenly cold. When was this submitted? 3 weeks ago. The paperwork shows both signatures, but our fraud prevention protocols require verbal confirmation for changes of this magnitude. I never signed anything, I said carefully. Sir, I have documentation here with your signature. I understand what you have. I'm telling you I never signed it. Can you email me copies of the paperwork? A pause. I'll need to speak with my supervisor. This is unusual. I'm sure it is. Please send everything to my email address on file. I'll be in touch. After hanging up, I sat staring at my laptop screen. Insurance fraud was a felony, but more than that, it suggested planning beyond a simple affair. Changing beneficiaries meant Erin was thinking long-term, considering scenarios where I might not be around to complicate her life. The implications made my hands shake slightly as I reached for my coffee. My phone buzzed with a text from Erin. Working through lunch today, Morrison project heating up, home late again, sorry. I stared at the message for a long moment, then opened the Find My iPhone app we both had installed for emergencies. Erin's location showed her at a restaurant 15 miles outside town, the same place Elliot had posted about on Instagram yesterday. I screenshot the location and added it to my growing file. By noon, I'd compiled enough evidence to fill a small hard drive. Bank records showing cash withdrawals that didn't match our spending patterns. Credit card statements with charges I didn't recognize. Phone logs, location data, social media posts, all painting the same picture of systematic deception. But evidence wasn't enough. I needed to understand the scope of what I was dealing with, and that meant taking some risks. I drove to Ashfield Tech Solutions around 1 p.m., parking across the street with a clear view of the employee lot. Elliot's BMW was missing, confirming what I already knew. He was at lunch with my wife, but his absence gave me an opportunity. The building's security was typical corporate theater: badge readers, cameras, a receptionist who looked bored. I walked in wearing khakis and a polo shirt, carrying a tablet and looking purposeful, the universal uniform of invisible service workers. IT support, I told the receptionist. Hear about the network issues in business development. She barely looked up. Elevators are to your right. BD is on the 3rd floor. The 3rd floor was open-plan cubicles surrounding a few corner offices. Elliot's name was on one of the corner doors, gold lettering on frosted glass that screamed executive privilege. The door was locked, but locks were just another system to understand. I'd learned basic lock-picking years ago, back when clients locked themselves out of their own offices and needed their computers accessed quickly. A tension wrench and pick set lived in my toolkit, right next to the screwdrivers and cable testers. Elliot's office was exactly what I'd expected: expensive furniture, motivational posters, and a desk that probably cost more than most people's cars. His computer was password protected, but the sticky note under his keyboard made that irrelevant. People never changed. His email inbox was a goldmine. Messages to Erin going back months, starting professional and gradually becoming personal. Meeting requests for project discussions that coincided with her late nights. Expense reports for dinners and hotels that weren't on any official company calendar. But the most damaging evidence was in his sent folder, a message to HR from 2 weeks ago, recommending Erin for a promotion that would require extensive travel. The kind of travel that would give them more opportunities to be together, away from suspicious husbands and office gossip. I copied everything to a thumb drive, cleared the browser history, and locked the office behind me. The whole operation took 12 minutes. On my way out, I smiled at the receptionist and mentioned that the network issues were resolved. "Great," she said, still not looking up from her magazine. "Have a nice day." Back in my truck, I sat in the parking lot and planned my next move. Direct confrontation was tempting, but premature. I had evidence of the affair, but not enough to ensure maximum consequences. Erin and Elliot thought they were being clever, sneaking around behind everyone's backs. They had no idea how much I actually knew. That ignorance was an advantage I wasn't ready to give up. My phone rang, Erin's name on the display. "Hey, honey," I answered, watching the building where she was supposed to be working. "Hi, just wanted to check in. How's your day going?" "Pretty good. Fixed a nasty virus infection this morning. Mrs. Patterson's computer was completely compromised." "That's great." Her voice had that distracted quality of someone multitasking. "Listen, I might be even later tonight. This project is really demanding." "No problem. I'll grab dinner with Len, maybe catch the game at Murphy's." "Perfect. Love you." "Love you too." After she hung up, I called Len Morrison. No relation to Erin's fictional project, just an unfortunate coincidence. Len was a retired cop who'd become my closest friend since moving to Ashfield. He understood investigations, evidence, and the importance of patience when building a case. "Murphy's Pub, 7 o'clock, I told him. "I need advice about a situation." "What kind of situation?" "The kind that requires beer and a clear head." Len chuckled. "Sounds serious. I'll be there." I spent the rest of the afternoon working on legitimate repairs, trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy while my marriage disintegrated in real time. But every few minutes, I'd check the Find My iPhone app, watching Erin's location move around town in patterns that had nothing to do with work. By evening, I had a complete timeline of her day: lunch at the Riverside Grill until 2:30, followed by a visit to the Marriott downtown until 4:45, then back to her office for appearances. The hotel visit was particularly interesting, lasting exactly 2 hours and 15 minutes. Just enough time for what hotel staff would politely call afternoon activities. Murphy's Pub was exactly what you'd expect from a place called Murphy's. Dark wood, green paint, and the kind of atmosphere that encouraged honest conversation over honest beer. Len was already there when I arrived, sitting in our usual booth with 2 pints waiting. "You look like someone stole your dog," he said as I sat down. "Worse, someone stole my wife." I told him everything: the parking lot incident, the phone records, the insurance fraud attempt, my reconnaissance mission to Elliot's office. Len listened without interruption, occasionally nodding or making notes on a napkin. "How long has this been going on?" he asked when I finished. 3 months, maybe 4, hard to pin down exactly when it started. "And you're sure about the evidence?" I showed him my phone, scrolling through photos, screenshots, and documents. Len studied each one with the methodical attention of someone who'd spent 30 years building criminal cases. "This is solid," he said finally. "More than solid. If this were a criminal investigation, you'd have enough for multiple charges." "But it's not criminal. It's just my life falling apart." Len took a long drink of his beer. "What do you want to do about it?" "I don't know. That's why I called you." "Well, you've got options. Confront them directly, hire a divorce lawyer, pretend it's not happening, or—" He paused, studying my face. "Or you could get creative." "What do you mean?" "I mean these people think they're smarter than you. They're sneaking around making plans, probably laughing about how clueless the husband is. That kind of arrogance creates opportunities." I leaned forward. "What kind of opportunities?" Len smiled, and for a moment I could see the cop he used to be, patient, calculating, always thinking 3 moves ahead. The kind that make people regret underestimating you. The next morning brought rain and revelation in equal measure. I woke up alone. Erin had left early again, another urgent meeting, and found myself staring at the ceiling, listening to water drum against the windows. Somewhere in that rhythm, a plan began to form. I'd spent years being invisible, the quiet husband who fixed computers, while his ambitious wife climbed corporate ladders. That invisibility had been a weakness, making me easy to overlook, easy to deceive. But perspectives could shift. What had been a liability could become an asset. After coffee and a review of my evidence files, I drove to Best Buy and purchased several items: a wireless security camera system, a voice-activated recording device, and a GPS tracker small enough to hide in a car. All perfectly legal purchases for a man concerned about home security and business assets. The cameras were easy to install. I'd done similar setups for clients worried about break-ins or employee misconduct. One went in our living room, disguised as a smoke detector, another in the kitchen, hidden inside a decorative clock. The third I saved for later, when I'd identified the location where it would do the most good. The GPS tracker was trickier. I needed access to Elliot's BMW without arousing suspicion. Fortunately, I'd noticed during my surveillance that he parked in the same spot every day, close to the building, but away from the main traffic flow. A creature of habit, like most people. I waited until lunchtime, when the parking lot would be busy enough to provide cover, but not so crowded that I'd be memorable. The tracker attached to the BMW's undercarriage with magnetic mounts, invisible unless someone knew where to look. Back home, I tested the system. The cameras fed to an app on my phone, providing real-time video with audio. The GPS tracker showed up as a blue dot on a map, updating every 30 seconds. The voice recorder was motion-activated, with 12 hours of battery life and enough memory for weeks of conversations. All the tools were in place. Now I needed to create opportunities to use them. That afternoon, I called Erin at work. "Hey, honey, I was thinking about what you said, about us spending more time together." "Oh?" Her voice was cautious, distracted. "What about it?" "Well, I know you've been working late a lot. Maybe I could bring dinner to your office sometime. Keep you company while you work on this Morrison project." A pause. "That's sweet, Grant, but I don't think that would work." You know how it is with confidential client information. Right, of course. Maybe this weekend then? We could drive up to Vermont, check out that bed and breakfast. This weekend might be tough. The project is really heating up, and I might need to work Saturday. On Saturday? That seems excessive. It's just how these big contracts work. Lots of coordination required. Her voice had that practiced patience of someone explaining something to a child. But maybe next weekend? Sure, next weekend sounds great. After hanging up, I checked the GPS tracker. Elliot's car was at the Riverside Grill again, the same place they'd been yesterday. Consistent patterns, predictable behavior. They were making this almost too easy. I drove to the restaurant and parked where I could observe without being seen. Through the windows, I could see them at a corner table, leaning close in conversation. Erin laughed at something Elliot said, touching his arm in a gesture I recognized, the same one she used to use with me back when we were dating. But this time, I was ready. The camera in my phone was recording, capturing evidence that would be impossible to explain away. When they left separately, Erin first, then Elliot 5 minutes later, I followed the BMW to a residential address in Riverside. Elliot's house was everything I'd expected: modern, expensive, and isolated. Large windows, manicured landscaping, the kind of place that screamed success to anyone driving by. More importantly, it was private enough for activities that required discretion. I made note of the address and security features, then headed home to review the day's intelligence. The cameras had captured Erin's phone calls, including one to Elliot, that confirmed their next meeting. The GPS tracker showed his movements throughout the day, establishing patterns I could use to predict future behavior. But the most valuable discovery was purely accidental. While reviewing the kitchen camera footage, I heard Erin talking to someone, not on the phone, but in person. A woman's voice I didn't recognize, discussing the situation and how much longer it could continue. I rewound and listened again. The conversation was brief, maybe 3 minutes, but revealing. Erin wasn't just having an affair, she was planning something bigger, something that required consultation and careful timing. The woman's voice was familiar, though I couldn't place it immediately. Then I remembered Janine Morrison, the same woman who'd told me about the parking lot incident, the same woman who'd been watching my reaction, measuring my response. Suddenly, her involvement made sense. Janine wasn't just a gossip spreading rumors, she was an active participant, maybe even a co-conspirator. The question was whether she was helping Erin cover up the affair or planning something more serious. I spent the evening analyzing every conversation I'd recorded, looking for clues about their ultimate goal. The insurance policy change suggested they were thinking long-term, possibly planning a life together that didn't include inconvenient husbands. But there had to be more. Affairs happened every day without elaborate schemes and forged signatures. Around 10 p.m., Erin came home looking tired and slightly disheveled. Her lipstick was gone, her hair less perfect than when she'd left that morning. She moved through our house like a stranger, touching familiar objects with distracted fingers. "How was work?" I asked from the couch, where I'd been reading a technical manual. "Exhausting. This Morrison project is more complex than we anticipated." She kicked off her shoes and rubbed her temples. "I think I'm getting a headache. Maybe you should take tomorrow off. Rest up." "Can't. Too much to do." She looked at me with something that might have been guilt or regret. "Grant, I know I've been distracted lately. Once this project wraps up, things will get back to normal." "When do you think that'll be?" "Soon. Another week, maybe 2. She moved toward the stairs, then paused. "Are we okay? I mean, you seem different lately." I looked up from my manual, meeting her eyes directly. "Different how?" "I don't know. Quieter, maybe. More watchful. Just tired, I guess. Business has been busy." She nodded, but her expression remained uncertain. "Well, I'm going to bed. Don't stay up too late." After she went upstairs, I pulled up the security feeds on my laptop. The cameras showed empty rooms now, but earlier footage revealed details I'd missed in real time. Erin moving through our kitchen with unfamiliar nervousness. Her phone calls lasting longer than she'd admitted. Small lies compounding into larger deceptions. But the most telling moment came just before she went to bed. Standing at the bottom of the stairs, she'd looked around our living room like she was memorizing it, or saying goodbye. I saved the footage and added it to my growing archive. Whatever Erin and her conspirators were planning, they were moving toward some kind of endgame. The question was whether I could figure out their strategy before they implemented it. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "We need to talk. Tomorrow, Murphy's Pub, 8 p.m. Come alone. J." Janine Morrison wanted a meeting. The co-conspirator was ready to make contact, probably to gauge how much I knew or suspected. It was an opportunity I couldn't pass up, but also a risk I couldn't ignore. I typed back, "I'll be there." Then I started planning for a conversation that could determine whether I stayed ahead of their scheme or became its next victim. Murphy's Pub felt different at 8 p.m. on a Thursday. Less crowded, more intimate, the kind of place where serious conversations happened in shadowed booths. I arrived 15 minutes early and chose a table with clear sightlines to both entrances, my back to the wall. Old habits from too many crime shows, maybe, but paranoia seemed justified given recent developments. Janine walked in exactly on time, scanning the room until she spotted me. She looked nervous, fidgeting with her purse strap and checking her phone repeatedly. When she sat down across from me, her smile was forced and brittle. "Thanks for coming," she said. "Thanks for the cryptic message. Very mysterious." A waitress approached, and Janine ordered wine. Expensive wine, the kind that suggested she was either celebrating or medicating. I stuck with beer. "So," I said after the drinks arrived, "what did you want to talk about?" Janine took a large sip of wine before answering. "I think you know." "Actually, I don't. You sent a vague text about needing to talk. Here I am, ready to listen." She studied my face, looking for tells or reactions. "It's about Erin." "What about her?" "Come on, Grant. We both know what's going on." I leaned back in my chair, projecting calm indifference. "Why don't you tell me what you think is going on?" Another sip of wine, larger this time. "She's having an affair with Elliot Brand." "That's a serious accusation." "It's not an accusation, it's a fact. I've seen them together, heard their conversations. They think they're being discreet, but office affairs are impossible to hide completely." I nodded thoughtfully, as if processing new information. "Assuming you're right, why are you telling me this?" "Because—" She paused, seeming to struggle with her words. "Because I like you. You're a good guy, and you don't deserve what they're doing." "What are they doing exactly?" Janine's composure cracked slightly. "More than just sneaking around. They're planning something, Grant. Something that involves you directly." "Such as?" "I can't say exactly, but I've heard fragments of conversations, seen documents that shouldn't exist." She leaned forward, lowering her voice. "You need to protect yourself." I took a slow drink of beer, buying time to process her words. Janine knew more than she was admitting, but she was also clearly frightened. The question was whether she was trying to help me or manipulate me. "What kind of documents?" I asked. "Insurance paperwork, legal forms, things with your signature that I don't think you actually signed." "You're talking about fraud." "I'm talking about people who think they're smarter than everyone else, making plans that could seriously hurt you." I set down my beer and looked directly at her. "Janine, why are you really here?" Her mask slipped completely then, revealing something desperate underneath. "Because I'm scared. Because I got involved in something that's gotten out of hand, and now I don't know how to get out." "Involved how?" "I helped them. At first it was just small things, covering for Erin when she was late, providing alibis for her absences. I thought it was romantic, you know? A workplace affair, harmless fun? But it's not harmless. No, it's not. She finished her wine in one gulp. They're talking about making permanent changes, Grant. Changes that would eliminate complications. The temperature in the pub seemed to drop several degrees. What kind of complications? The kind that files insurance claims and asks inconvenient questions. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of her implications settling between us like a third presence at the table. Around us, other conversations continued. Sports, weather, weekend plans. Normal people discussing normal things, unaware that lives were being discussed and fates decided just a few feet away. "What do you want from me?" I asked finally. "I want you to be careful. I want you to document everything, protect yourself legally, and maybe—" She hesitated. "Maybe consider that your marriage isn't the only thing at risk here." "Are you wearing a wire, Janine?" The question caught her off guard. "What? No, why would you—" "Because this feels like a setup. You approach me with warnings about my wife, claim to have inside information, then suggest I'm in physical danger. It's either a genuine warning or an elaborate manipulation." She reached across the table and grabbed my hand. "Grant, I swear to you, this is real. I made a mistake getting involved, and now I'm trying to fix it." "By warning the target?" "By warning someone I actually care about." Her grip tightened. "You've always been kind to me, even when other people treated me like office furniture. You didn't deserve any of this." I studied her face, looking for deception. What I saw instead was genuine fear, mixed with something that might have been guilt or regret. "Okay," I said. "Assuming you're telling the truth, what do you suggest I do?" "Document everything, get proof of what they're planning, and don't confront them directly until you have protection in place." "What kind of protection?" "Legal, financial, maybe physical. I don't know exactly what they're capable of, but I know they're desperate enough to forge your signature on legal documents." I pulled out my phone and showed her a screenshot of the insurance policy change. "You mean like this?" Her face went pale. "Where did you get that?" "The insurance company called me for verification. Apparently, someone submitted paperwork changing my beneficiary status without my knowledge." "Oh, God." She put her head in her hands. "It's worse than I thought." "What's worse?" "If they're already moving on the insurance, then they're close to whatever they're planning." I leaned forward. "Janine, I need you to be specific. What exactly do you think they're planning to do to me?" She looked up, tears forming in her eyes. "I think they want you gone, Grant. Permanently gone. And I think they're running out of patience." The conversation continued for another hour, with Janine providing details about overheard conversations, suspicious meetings, and documents she'd seen in Erin's possession. By the time we parted ways, I had a clearer picture of the conspiracy against me, and a reluctant ally who might prove useful in the days ahead. Driving home, I considered my options. The smart play would be to contact a lawyer, file for divorce, and let the legal system sort everything out. But the smart play assumed I was dealing with rational people making poor choices, not desperate individuals planning something that could permanently solve their husband problem. At home, I found Erin in our bedroom, packing clothes into a suitcase. "Going somewhere?" I asked from the doorway. She looked up, startled. "Oh, you scared me. I didn't hear you come in." "Sorry. Where are you headed?" "Business trip. Last-minute thing for the Morrison project. I'll be gone through the weekend." "Where to?" "Boston. Client meetings, project reviews, the usual." She continued packing, not meeting my eyes. I know the timing is terrible, but it can't be helped. I watched her fold clothes with mechanical precision, each movement practiced and efficient. "Will Elliot be going too?" Her hands stilled for just a moment. "Elliot? Why would you ask about him?" "He's involved in the Morrison project, isn't he? Seems like he'd be included in important client meetings." Yes, he'll be there, along with several other team members." She resumed packing, her movements slightly less steady. Why all the questions? Just curious. You've been working so hard on this project, I wanted to understand what was involved. It's just business, Grant. Boring corporate stuff that would put you to sleep. I nodded and stepped into the room. When do you leave? Early tomorrow morning. My flight's at 7 a.m. I could drive you to the airport. No need, I'm taking a cab. She closed the suitcase and set it by the door. Actually, I should get some sleep. Early morning and all. Of course. But instead of going to bed, Erin went downstairs to make phone calls. I listened from the top of the stairs as she spoke in hushed tones about confirming arrangements and making sure everything was ready. The conversations were brief and cryptic, but the tension in her voice was unmistakable. When she finally came to bed, she lay as far from me as possible, her breathing shallow and irregular. She wasn't asleep. She was planning, calculating, preparing for whatever would happen during her business trip. I stared at the ceiling and made my own plans. If Erin and Elliot thought they could eliminate their complications with a convenient accident during a weekend getaway, they were about to discover that their target was more prepared than they'd anticipated. The hunter was about to become the hunted, and I intended to make sure they regretted underestimating the quiet man who fixed computers and noticed everything. Erin left at 6 a.m. with her suitcase and a kiss on my forehead that felt like a goodbye. I watched from our bedroom window as her taxi pulled away, then immediately checked the GPS tracker on Elliot's BMW. The car was already moving, heading toward the airport on the same route her taxi had taken. But they weren't going to Boston. The GPS signal led south instead of north toward Hartford, and then beyond. I followed at a distance on my laptop, watching the blue dot move steadily away from Massachusetts. By noon, they'd reached a small town in Connecticut that definitely wasn't on any corporate travel itinerary. I packed my own bag, clothes, laptop, cameras, and the voice recorder Janine had unknowingly helped me test during our conversation at Murphy's. Everything she'd told me was now documented, including her admission of conspiracy and her warnings about permanent solutions to husband problems. The drive to Connecticut took 4 hours through winding back roads that probably looked romantic to couples seeking weekend getaways. I found Elliot's BMW parked at the Riverside Inn, a quaint bed and breakfast that advertised itself as perfect for intimate retreats and special occasions. I parked across the street and called the inn's main number. Riverside Inn, how may I help you? Hi, I'm trying to reach my wife. She's staying there this weekend with a business colleague. Erin Solen? Let me check our registry. I'm sorry, sir, but we don't have anyone registered under that name. Maybe she's registered under her maiden name? Or possibly under her colleague's name? Elliot Brand? Ah, yes. Mr. and Mrs. Brand checked in this morning. Would you like me to connect you to their room? No, thank you. I'll surprise them. I hung up and sat in my truck, processing the implications. They weren't just having an affair. They were practicing being married, trying on new identities like costume changes. The weekend wasn't about eliminating me. It was about rehearsing life without me. But Janine's warnings still echoed in my mind. If they were planning something permanent, this romantic getaway could be an alibi building exercise, establishing their presence somewhere else when the accident occurred. My phone buzzed with a text from Erin. Arrived safely in Boston, meetings all day, miss you. I screenshot the message and added it to my evidence file, then sent back, miss you too. Have a productive trip. The next few hours were spent in surveillance mode, watching the inn for signs of activity. Erin and Elliot emerged around 4 p.m., dressed casually and walking hand in hand like any other couple on vacation. They drove to a nearby restaurant, had dinner on the patio, then returned to the inn as the sun was setting. Normal couple behavior, except for the fact that one of them was married to someone else. Around 9 p.m., I made my move. The inn's lobby was all rustic charm and soft lighting, designed to make guests feel like they were visiting a wealthy relative's country home. The desk clerk was a college-aged kid who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. "Excuse me," I said, approaching the counter. I'm supposed to meet the Brands. They're staying here this weekend. Could you ring their room? Sure thing. He picked up the phone and dialed. Mr. Brand, there's someone here to see you. He didn't give his name. Okay, I'll send him up. Room 12, top of the stairs. I climbed the narrow staircase, my footsteps muffled by thick carpet. Room 12 was at the end of the hall, its door slightly ajar. Light spilled out, along with the sound of quiet conversation. I knocked once and pushed the door open. Erin and Elliot were sitting on the bed, fully clothed but close together, looking at what appeared to be legal documents spread across the comforter. They looked up as I entered, their expressions shifting from confusion to recognition to something approaching terror. Hello, honey, I said to Erin. How are the meetings in Boston? The silence stretched for several seconds, broken only by the ticking of an antique clock on the nightstand. Erin's mouth opened and closed without producing sound, while Elliot seemed to be calculating distances to the door. Grant, Erin finally managed. What are you doing here? Surprising my wife on her business trip, though I have to say, this doesn't look much like a corporate meeting. I stepped into the room and closed the door behind me, noting the papers on the bed, insurance forms, what looked like a will, and several documents with official letterheads. How did you find us? Elliot asked, his voice steady but his hands shaking slightly. GPS tracker on your car. Amazing what you can buy online these days. I moved closer to the bed, studying the documents. What's all this paperwork? Planning something special? Erin stood up quickly, stepping between me and the papers. Grant, I can explain. I'm sure you can. You've always been good with explanations. I looked at Elliot, who was trying to gather the documents without seeming obvious about it. Don't bother hiding those. I've already seen copies. Copies? Erin's voice was barely a whisper. Insurance fraud is a serious crime, Erin. Forging someone's signature on legal documents can result in federal charges. I pulled out my phone and showed them the screen, especially when there's this much documentation of the conspiracy. The phone displayed a video file, security footage from our kitchen, showing Erin and Janine discussing the plan and how to handle Grant. The audio was clear enough to make out every incriminating word. Elliot stood up, his corporate confidence finally returning. Look, Grant, this is all a misunderstanding. Yes, Erin and I have developed feelings for each other, but we haven't done anything illegal. Really? What about the forged insurance documents? The fake signatures on beneficiary changes? The conspiracy to commit fraud? That's not... We weren't... Erin stumbled over her words, looking between me and Elliot like a trapped animal. Here's what's going to happen, I said, my voice calm and reasonable. You're going to sit down, both of you, and listen very carefully. They sat. I've spent the last week documenting everything, every lie, every forged signature, every fraudulent document. I have recordings of your conversations, GPS tracking of your movements, and sworn statements from witnesses. I paused, letting that sink in. Janine Morrison has been very helpful, by the way. She's quite concerned about the conspiracy she accidentally joined, worried enough to cooperate with law enforcement if necessary. Erin's face went white. Janine already did. She's terrified of being charged as an accessory to fraud. Amazing how quickly people turn when they realize they're looking at federal prison time. Elliot cleared his throat. What do you want, Grant? I want my wife to come home and end this affair. I want you to transfer to another company, preferably in another state, and I want all fraudulent documents corrected immediately. And if we refuse? I smiled, the expression feeling strange on my face. Then I release everything to the FBI, your company's board of directors, and every local news outlet that might be interested in a story about corporate executives committing insurance fraud. The room fell silent again. Outside, I could hear other guests moving through the hallway, their voices cheerful and relaxed. Normal people having normal weekends, unaware of the drama playing out behind closed doors. You have until Monday morning to decide, I said, standing up. After that, the decision gets made for you. I walked to the door, then paused and looked back. Oh, and Erin, next time you want to wave at a security camera, make sure you know who's watching. I left them sitting on the bed surrounded by their conspiracy papers. Two people who'd thought they were clever enough to eliminate an inconvenient husband. They'd underestimated the quiet man who fixed computers and noticed everything. The drive home took 4 hours through the same winding roads, but this time they felt like a victory lap. My phone stayed silent. No calls, no texts, no desperate attempts at explanation or negotiation. By the time I reached Ashfield, I knew the marriage was over. But unlike Erin and Elliot's version of the ending, mine would be legal, documented, and entirely on my terms. The hunter had become the hunted, and the quiet man who everyone underestimated